Right folks, welcome to this exciting video where you once again join me in the wild landscape of Scotland. And today I've brought you into this winter wonderland right here with the super white frost and the light covering the snow all over the ground here. This week in Scotland it's a proper deep freeze out here, and this is always the second phase of like El Nino. After the mild wet weather you get super cold freezing weather. And then after that, in January this year, well next year, 2024 January, we should get a heap of snow coming as well at that time. But right now it's like a deep freeze, and I've come up to this mad glen here, and it's Glen Clova. I was here a few weeks ago documenting an ancient, forgotten little settlement up in this glen, and I thought how cool would it be to come back and see how crazy the snow is. I just love these glens for the wildness and the rawness of the nature. And it's just incredible. The air's so cold and bitter today. These glens are at quite a high altitude, and that's how we've got the snow up on the hills and this frosty ground. It's just incredible to see, folks. Look at that. I thought there would be a lot more snow up here in this glen today, but actually I'm surprised it's still just up at the hilltops. And that's the reason I'm way ahead, basically further up Glen Clova in this adventure, and just to explore some little historical nuggets or see what we see along the way. It's just a wee Glen Clova adventure. So check this out, folks. This is just the mad landscape. Further up the glen we've come now, and you can see the massive mountain tops leading on up to Glendall. The way the sun's shining on those highest hills. The way the snow's got a thin covering on this here, and then the thick layer of snow at the top of all these hills. But I just noticed there's an interesting, I think I noticed this one time before, there's interesting stones there, and it almost looks like a stone circle, and then there's ancient boundary lines of old fields. When I was at the abandoned settlement up this glen a few weeks ago on the video, I was actually about 2 miles down there, and there's like evidence of little houses and cool little things like that. But then up here, I think this has been more the area that they've had their fields and stuff like that. And check this out, this is Broughtal Estate here. And we're just about to go and look at this ancient wall line that's here. This is like some old history. That gate was frozen shut with the frost. I've put the woolly hat and the gloves on since the last little clip when you saw me at the roadside. I just thought when I came to this spot, I had to pull in. The landscape driving up here is just breathtaking, and then once the snow's on the hills it changes everything. Over the years it's just mad how places like this change. The landscapes in the summer are just so incredible compared to these equally as incredible winter landscapes. And this history is just often hidden within those mad places. This is some proper Scottish wilderness. Like, you could probably walk for like miles this direction and you wouldn't see a main road or probably hardly any people. You would see some mad wildlife, maybe deer and stags, and that's how wild these hills are out here. The only people walking these hills normally are the gamekeepers. Often the hill walkers would come to places, but they're a lot more likely to be on the main track. On the hill behind this area here is Loch Wirral, and I was actually up there on an adventure recently as well. Glen Clova's got so many amazing little places to explore and little nuggets of history as well hidden within that. A few miles further up, the path goes up from the Clova Hotel to Loch Brandy, and that's another incredible hilltop loch there within those hills. And from a distance, wherever you are in Angus, if you look up to the snowy hills, you often see these incredible mountainous peaks here with the sun shining on them. And I've seen them this week with the snow and the sun, and I just wanted to come up for an adventure into these sort of places. It's just cool. Look at this, this is random. Look, there's an old sink here, or it must have been used potentially out of an old house and then brought here maybe by the shepherd for sheep or whatever. A lot of these wall lines and stuff are from the ancient farming and agriculture on this land. And a wall like this, can just think how many years it stood here on the hill. Maybe even to this day a shepherd would still use this land, but it doesn't look like he's been using this particular wall line for the sheep recently. The more years that pass, stuff like this falls down and gets forgotten, and you can just imagine the original farmers that built that. They were probably the first people out here on these wild lands doing agriculture. And often back at that time there would have been a lot more wild forest areas and bushy areas. Probably a lot more like difficult to even navigate through that sort of stuff. Whereas now it's been tamed. I can see this has all been planted here like a plantation. So give it another like 30 years, there'll be a forest even in this area. And this piece of history will just be at the edge of that little forest there. And like every time I turn around and see these lands, it's just like looking at a Scottish postcard. And it's so cool being able to explore these mad places and then share them with the world on the videos. Like, it's so interesting. See, it's like a big circle here where I imagine he would have like rounded up his sheep, probably for sorting them out, or maybe even putting them down to the market. And then look at this here. This is like a little corner area. Some of these old bits may have had like a shed with a wooden roof, or even a full wooden shed, but all that remains will be gone because these walls will have been here for hundreds of years, and most of the older like timber construction and stuff will be totally gone from a site like this. But it's just the scars on the land that often tell the story of the history. I think there's like a bit of a walking path takes you right up the hill there. But on a day like today, it's just so cold in these places. You can see it there, there's just that thick layer of like icy snow. The temperatures are just mad. These walls have been so well built, dry stone construction. And often when you see the curved edges, that's a sign it was used for like livestock and sheep. And that was a way that the sheep couldn't hide in that corner of the building if you were trying to round them up or single out one animal. Like, look at the size of some of the stones they've used. Just check that out, folks. It's almost like balancing there. But if you consider how many years it's been balancing there, it must just... credit to the boy that put it there. It's a sturdy construction. Often when I come to these places, I'm often careful not to actually knock them down any worse than what they are. Because probably if you were to try and like climb over that or go and try and look at another part without going in the gate there, you'd be likely to knock it down and ruin the history. I can hear almost like water running. Or it could just be the wind blowing the trees, but it doesn't seem windy enough for that. Yeah, there's other big stones and stuff here, but often with agricultural scenes, like stuff like that was moved years before this forest was planted. There could be any history here related to like a wee croft in this area. And look at this here, the way the stones are, they're almost falling over at this corner. I can't even believe how cold it is right now, folks. Look at this massive cornerstone here they've used. That just shows you, like, they were using probably a natural stone there in the land and then building their little area. Anyway, let's head on with this adventure. It's just a mad landscape. And I was just thinking about going to the other side and looking at that little standing stone almost looking thing. It's like they've built the stones up in a row at one time, massive stones. And it is interesting to document stuff like that. You can often ask the question of history, like, what were they even doing here back at that time? They would have had different techniques and things they were doing for the agriculture. I can see in the distance, behind these highest hills in the foreground, there's massive hills way back there with white snow all over them. It's such a winter scene out here today, and my hands are freezing cold right now. So I've now crossed the main road here and I'm going over to look at this, what looks like an old stone circle. Such an interesting little thing on the land. There is massive outlines of ancient like landscaped areas where they must have had boundary lines in their ancient fields. And I just love seeing pieces of land like this I'm just going to obviously keep it moving right now though, because it's so cold. Often with the frosty ground like that, you can actually see the outlines of the old fields so much better, leading like way around there. And then there's other little boundaries crossing down the way here. But it's so funny to see how they've made their actual boundary of the field right down this steep slope and then into the hollow and round. It makes you think how much ground or whatever is probably built up with the vegetation around stuff like that. And then thinking of that, this could have even been like a little house or something back at that time. You know, like this is an interesting like hole in the land. You have to wonder if this is like related to the site back in the day. And this unusual like stone circle. These stones have definitely been put here obviously in this pattern. And like these ones here are the most impressive ones that I noticed from the road. Wow, that's a massive stone there. It could have even been like an old religious site or something for the old settlement that we saw a few weeks ago in the video in this glen. Or this may just be the last remains of where there's been like a little wooden building even that's gone. This was maybe just their outer boundary wall here at this point. It is interesting to see though the size of the stones that they've used. Like, how were they moving that about? They must have had horses and winches and all sorts of things. And then it's a proper right angle at this side, which is interesting because round this end here it proper curves and then it's like a circle. So it's cool to see the different things which has been done in Glen Clova over the years with those like massive stones. It's crazy, like they're the last thing here to tell a story of the history. It's like a marker in the land from an ancient time, but it's on a mega scale up in this glen. There must have been tons of little agricultural communities. Look, you can see the outline of these fields leading over the frosty hill. And then this is such an interesting like bit in the land here because it's a massive dip. But then that could have been dug at any time, or there could have been anything built here that was maybe taken away. Sometimes stones were taken from ancient sites so that they could actually build newer like houses and properties in like the local area. Sometimes farms and things were built with stones from older constructions. But I just thought it's super interesting to stop and document this. Look, it is a proper, see from here it looks like a proper circle when you see it around like this, leading back around here. And then it's almost like that's been an entrance way into the centre of whatever that's been. So it's amazing to see and ponder the history once again. It's often cool when you visit somewhere just to imagine how it was for the people way back at the time that the place was built. It's just amazing because it's like hundreds and maybe even 1,000 years ago that those stones were laid in that position. Check this out folks, I've come to one of my favourite spots at Glen Clova. It's right up at the top where Clova Hotel is, and then the path up to Loch Brandy's up that direction. But just check this view out here of the hills. It's mad to see with this snowy landscape in the foreground. I was here last winter with the Channel DJ and this river was totally frozen over. And I can see today there's ice across the top of the water. And that's cool to see. And then there's this old bridge here. You can see the sign ramp, and that's because they've been digging the road out here for resurfacing it. Because I think the road surface was getting pretty bad at this point recently. Yeah, it's mad to see the wee river flowing down this glen. But what a mad little place also to stop for the final scene of this video. It's just a winter wonderland in these glens, and it was so cool to come and have an adventure up here. I can see right up there, the water's frozen solid, and there's ice right across the top of the water here. This is actually a point in the land where the two burns join together, or the burn joins the river here. Anyway, I'm going to end this one here folks. It's been a mad, freezing cold adventure here in Glen Clova. We've documented that ancient history at a crazy time of year when it's frozen solid in the land. Sometimes when the white frost's on the land, it's easier to see the old wall like boundaries and where things were back in the day. I can see there's a few pheasants over here walking about, probably looking for something to eat in the long grass. And on a day like today, I've seen a lot of gamekeepers out shooting as well. So it's just all going on in these Scottish glens. And it's almost a paradise scene when you see it like this. And that's why I love coming out for a walk. Even if it's just often something near the roadside, be like an interesting little tale of history to tell. It's cool just to get out of the house, even if it's like -4. It's just beautiful lands when it's -4. It changes how everything looks. The sun shining on the top of these hills here turns it into an incredible scene. A fairy tale scene, folks. Right folks, I'm going to end this one here in front of this paradise scene. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back soon with the next adventure, wherever I end up going.